Lecture 6.3, General Applications of Percents. So in this lecture, we are going to cover quite a few examples of how you would use equations to solve for either the percent or the number related to the percent. For example, on a 120 question test, student answers 96 correctly. What percent of the problems did the student answer correctly? So we don't know what the percent is, so if we're going to set this up in a proportion, n is to 100, as 96 correct answers are to the total number of questions. We'll cross multiply, so 120n equals 96 times 100. So 120n equals 9600. Divide both sides by 120. And therefore n equals, and we can reduce this down to 80. But remember, our answer is in percent, so we do need our percent symbol. So the student received a B on their exam. Another example is how much HCl, so hydrochloric acid, is in 60 milliliters bottle that is marked 80% HCl. So you may want to take a moment, stop the video, and try and set up the problem yourself before we continue. Let's go ahead. We know 80 is to 100. We know the full bottle is 60 milliliters, but we don't know how much of it is hydrochloric acid. Now we're going to multiply, cross multiply. So I have 80 times 60 equals 100n. 80 times 60 is 4,200 divided by 100n. Divide both sides by 100. Cancel our zeros. Therefore, n is 42, but we do want to answer it in regards to our question. It is 42 wets, it is 42 milliliters. Let's say 42% of students at a certain college are female, and there are 2,400 female students. What is the total number of students in the college, as well as how many students are male? So we'll answer both questions. Let's solve the first question. So we know 48%, so 48 over 100. We know that the total amount are 2,400 females out of, we don't know how many students there are. So the n is for the whole, the amount. We're going to cross multiply. 48n equals 2400 times 100. 48n equals 2400. Divide each side by 48. And we have a total, n equals 5,000. That's the total number of students. But how many are male? Well, if we know 2,400 of them are female, subtract out the female. Therefore, we have 2,600 of the students are males. Do be careful as to what the question asks for and how many steps you need to take to solve it, because if I just let you know, or if I just asked you how many students are male, you'd have to find out the total number of students in the college first, like we did in this example, and then subtract out the number of female students to get the number of male students. So do be careful as to what the question actually asks you to solve for. Here's another example. If 25% of students in elementary algebra class receives a grade of an A, there are 300 students that are enrolled in elementary algebra this year. How many students will receive an A, or we expect to receive an A? Again, we're going to set it up in a proportion. 25 is to 100. We know the total number of students is 300, and we want to know how many students will get A's. Now, we could cross multiply. That would be our standard way of solving this. But if you take a moment just to look at the problem, this is a proportion. 100 I multiplied by what number to get to 300? Well, I multiplied it by 3. And if I multiplied the denominator by 3, I need to multiply the numerator by 3. And if that's the case, n would be 25 times 3. In other words, 75. Now we could do this using cross multiplication. So 25 times 300 equals 100 times n. And then I would have 7,500 equals 100n. Divide by 100 for both sides. And I still get the same answer of 75. But if you just kind of take that 1 second to figure out, oh, could I solve this another way? Maybe it's easier just to recognize that from 100 to 300, I multiplied it by 3, and what I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. And therefore, I can get my answer pretty straightforward, 25 times 3. Or, if you don't see it, go ahead and use our standard method of cross multiplication and then dividing by the coefficient of the variable, and then you'll still solve the problem the correct way. Let's try one more example. According to the EPA, Americans generate about 250 million tons of trash in 2010. If we recycled over 85 million tons of material, what percent of the trash was recycled in 2010? So I don't know what percentage it is, so it's going to be n over 100 will equal however much I recycled, 85, and I don't need to include million tons because my denominator is also going to be in million tons, so I can just leave it out at least for my calculation. Once I have that, again, I could kind of stop and be clever and say, okay, well, 100 times 2.5 got me to 250. So if I divide 85 by 2.5, I'll get back to n. But in this case, I'll go ahead and cross multiply. 250 times n equals 85 times 100. That leaves me with 250n equals 8,500. Divide both sides by 250. And therefore, 0. I do know that that will cancel out, and let me do a little bit of math on the side here. 25 goes into 850. So n equals 34. But again, what were we solving for? Percent. So we do need to include our percent marker. Why? Because 34 is not the same thing as 34%. If I was going to change percent into a number, it would be 0.34, which of course is not equal to 34. So you do want to be careful as when to put the percent sign and when to leave it off. So that's it for this lecture. Until next time, be seeing you.